Welcome back. I am so excited to see you here. So in this video, I will be discussing the character of Joe Goldberg from the popular Netflix show You, and discussing how his personality intersects with traits of codependency. So codependency is basically a pattern of behavior emerging out of trauma in which with a person there's an excessive focus outside of self, there are dysfunctional relationship patterns, and there is a lot of emotional and psychological reliance on another person, typically someone who needs help. So if you want to watch part 1 of this series, you can check it out through this link or else through the link in the description box below. Thanks for watching!
Now, Joe is also a pretty big people pleaser. So people pleasing is basically a behavior in which a person forgoes their boundaries and their authentic truth in order to appease or please somebody else. And it's also characterized by a fear of saying no. In some circumstances where he should be saying no, he finds it hard to do so. So, even when he's in an LSD-induced stupor, he still has to answer Love's phone call even while he's lighting a body on fire in a forest. He has to answer Beck's call, and so it's just like he must answer his girlfriend's summons because he cannot let them down. His identity is heavily wrapped up in the girl that he's in a relationship with, or the girl he's dating, or even the girl he's just interested in. It's like he is substituting his girlfriend's identity for his own. And so, obviously he can't let her go, so he has to just people please, and he has to put her first. And Joe does this because in some ways he thinks that boundaries come in the way of true selfless love. He not only thinks that his boundaries are not valid, but also he crosses the boundaries of other people, like his girlfriends. He invades their space, their privacy, their trust. He violates all of that because in some ways he thinks that boundaries come in the way of true love. And so there is this kind of chivalrous ethic which he tries to display because of how much he's trying to save and protect other people. That's why he's getting the details of Ella's daughter, and he has even for this person whom he's not really connected to, he has this sense of, oh, who is protecting her, this young girl who's protecting her in the world against bad people. And this stems from his beliefs carried over from childhood that the women you love, and even the people are vulnerable to bad people, and it is his job to save them, that he's the personal caretaker of people out there to save them and keep them from harms. And even though of course he's not responsible for anybody else's safety, it's people's own job to make sure that they're safe and all that, but he somehow takes over that responsibility. And it's paradoxical because he's trying to save these women, but he actually ends up harming them pretty permanently.
Open the door! Open the door! Please! Please! Let them down!
Which we will come to in just a bit, how he harms them. A big hallmark of people pleasing is inauthenticity, because he's not expressing how he truly feels or what he actually needs and wants. So, all of the problems in the relationships that come up within him, he's trying to solve them all by himself. He does not communicate with the other person, what's coming up and all that. Though yeah, that's probably why they last for as long as they do, because if he started to actually communicate, hey, I'm obsessed with you, and I'm stealing your lingerie, I'm going to continuously remind you of that. It wouldn't last. Anyway, that's people pleasing for you. Another big self-betrayal that you see him indulging in is he just lets his girlfriends get away with cheating. You cheated on me, but you still love me, we can make it work. This is because he's so dependent on them. His identity is so tied up with them that he can't lose them, even if it means compromising his self-respect. And again, I guess if you're okay with cheating, it doesn't always have to mean that you're compromising your self-respect, but in this case, it's clear that he just doesn't have any non-negotiables. They can do whatever they want and he's still going to be okay with them, and he's still going to be trying to please them and manipulate as well as control them. Also, come to think of it, he's a pretty big people pleaser with Love's brother.
Who shows up to work unshowered? Who shows up anywhere in a kimono?
So, I couldn't help but notice.
God, that guy is so annoying, you just want to smack him in the face, but you're devastated when this happens. In his loss of self, the biggest calamity becomes his morality, which again, when you come to think of him, is very flimsy. I think the most interesting aspect of Joe's personality is how inconsistent it really comes across as. But anyway, as for his morality, on the one hand, he thinks that it's good to help people when they're in pain. That's why he's like so nice and empathetic towards Paco and helps him as well. In general, throughout the show, you can also see that Joe's a helper. He thinks that seeing people in pain and trying to help them is a good thing, and he genuinely tries to do that. He thinks about other people's problems and how to solve them, and his presence leaves a mark on other people's lives. But due to his childhood trauma, helping comes to connote certain twisted meanings inside his mind. Helping his girlfriend means burning her toxic ex's remains in a forest, shooting her toxic best friend, and when things don't go well, strangling her as well. Shoot, that really does attract toxic people, doesn't she?
And I'm not to sound like whatever, but just I'm a poet.
We will discuss that poignant scene of him killing Beck in detail later, but because of the boundaries thing, his morality really comes under fire. He does not understand them. He does not understand that people deserve their own freedom, that people need to be given the freedom to do what they want in their own life, and you cannot live somebody's life in place of them. He does not have boundaries around what actions are permissible and what are not, and that's why his morality becomes collateral damage. Now, many people might just want to instantly jump and say that he's an evil person, but I think that it's pretty obvious if you watch the show carefully that his personality is supposed to be more nuanced than that. Kind of reminds me of Frankenstein, where a lot of people might just instantly be like, oh, the monster is evil because he's doing so many bad things, but the motivation and the circumstances are not taken into account. The monster was deprived of love consistently and he wanted love. That's why he did the things he did. Does not make him good, but does not exactly make him bad either. So it's more of him being on a gray spectrum. All the things Joe comes to idealize manifest themselves into evil things with evil consequences. I think it's also interesting how the show tries to show the codependent and really messed up connotations in our, colloquial expressions around love. So, saying that I would walk through fire for you, I would die for you. Those kinds of things are actually very codependent. I think that this show actually does a good job of questioning the romanticized notions of love that we uphold in our common discourse. What we consider romantic and swoon-worthy can quickly turn gory and bloody if taken in a literal sense, and relationship dynamics that feel too good and too replete with fullness. They're like an everything ship can quickly devolve into toxicity because people are not supposed to invest so much into a relationship. They are supposed to still have a sense of self. Joe doesn't necessarily go around thinking that he's going to do the wrong things, but he ends up choosing the wrong means to get something that's a very basic human motivation. You know, we all want love, and the things that he chooses to do for love turn out to be very messed up, let's just say. The main issue with him is how his codependency shows up within him. So, you know, he like forgoes all considerations of a separation between himself and his girlfriend, and he snatches from them a very valuable freedom, the freedom to mess up in their life and face the consequences of their own poor choices. He's more like a parent to them than a boyfriend, and it's like he's like a parent who's like very overprotective and wants to make sure that their child does not come under harm's way, but in that process the parent hampers the child's development. That's what this is like, honestly. He tries to avoid any mistake in this relationship because of his fear of abandonment, because it's like, if I make a mistake, I'm going to be rejected. Which honestly, come to think of it, it happens in this very weird scene where Beck breaks up with him, like kind of breaks up with him as a consequence of him throwing a surprise birthday party. Like, why are you storming out, Beck? But I think it was just because of how much was welling up inside her. But anyway, you know, even though he avoids all mistakes in this relationship, he makes a lot of mistakes in what he owes to his morality and to his conscience. And the biggest mistake that he makes is thinking that he's not a human being. That's why he has this sort of double standard toward himself. That's why he thinks that it's okay for him to do stuff that it's not okay for other people to do, you know? He lets himself get tainted in ways he would not let other people get tainted. And you know, it's because you need a self in order to get tainted. He does all of the dirty work he would never allow other people to do. And he's like so concerned for other people's safety, even while he really puts his own safety on the line and leaves himself utterly unprotected a lot of the time. For example, when he starts cheating on Karen with Beck, he knows that Beck is not good for him. Of course, he knows he's addicted to her. He knows that she swallowed him whole. He knows that he's ruining the one good relationship that he does have. But when it comes to his own safety, he's just like, nah, don't care, some other time, bruh.
Karen was right. Addiction is a monster.
It's like he's the dustpan for other people's problems, and he's just repressed his own self so deep that he cannot really love himself, and thus this fuels the feelings of unworthiness that he has, because that is what is at the heart of his codependency. It's that he feels he is unworthy of love, and that's why it's okay for him to just give himself up for a relationship, because he's not worthy of love. And these feelings come from all the neglect and the betrayals that he has faced from his caregivers. He has repressed himself so deep that it takes acts of immense intensity to break out of the oblivion of just being invisible.